Was there always shots fired?
Sometimes, a lot of times. I was in a few big ones. Uh, there's one famous one, La Cúpula. It's like a people can look this up. There's a lot of footage of that. La Cúpula was basically a castle-like structure house in Tijuana and had a giant dome on top of it. It looked like a mosque. There was a report of armed people inside of it. So responding units went there and they started getting fire from on top of that cupola structure. So high vantage point, all of the advantages. So they got pinned down. Some of the federal police showed up, and then we showed up. We had G3s back then, so they were pretty good at shooting people from that were hiding behind bricks.
Yeah.
Some of the other guys had ARs and stuff like that, so it was an interesting back and forth in that regard. Back then, all of the police units showed up, like from the federal to the state to the local, and finally the army showed up with a 50 cal. And
This is the same fight?
Yeah.
How long did this go on?
It took like 4 hours, maybe
4
or
hours?
5 hours. And this is in the middle of Tijuana. There's a daycare center next to it.
Jesus.
So we're evacuating some of the kids out of the daycare center. This time I was protecting a high-ranking politician, so we had access to armored Suburbans. So we're bringing in the armored Suburbans to see if we can evacuate some of these kids. It was a shit show. Everybody was shooting. Nobody knew who. Some of the people who were showing up, there were cops who were wearing civilian clothing, including us. So it was a shit show. Eventually, it subsided, and on the inside, opened up some of the doors. The army broke in and opened some of the doors to this place, and a fully uniformed municipal police officer stepped out. It's like, I jumped the wall from back then. Let's go through here. And like, all of us were like, that guy is probably part of that group over there. So he immediately got bagged. And when they went in, it was basically a place where they were keeping abducted people that they were ransoming out, and a lot of them got shot in the head. And some of the guys that were inside shooting out put zip ties on and handcuffs and pretended to be abducted.
Yeah.
I remember somebody commenting on the fact that the smell gave them away. They picked them up and they would smell fresh. Not like somebody's been sleeping in the same clothing for months.
Yeah.
And also they didn't have any raw wrist with the restraints, so they immediately got bagged and tagged too. A bunch of them were cops.
No shit.
Yeah. Police radios, and so we would use satellite radios, Matra systems. And they had those there too. It was apparently encrypted and very secure, but they had them.
When you were trying to evacuate, or when you and your team was trying to evacuate the children out of the daycare, is there like a mutual respect between the police and the cartel on sparing them, or
there's no.
Will they try to exploit that? And then like what Al Qaeda will do is they will look for targets opportunity that are fucking easy, that will make headline news, and then try to twist it so that it makes it look like we did it.
I mean, there's pictures online about that firefight. You can see some of the agents, basically just two kids on each hand, just trying to extract them. Rounds were flying everywhere. Nobody was respecting anything. They were in a fight for their lives. Were cornered, so that was all they were up to. You can see them trying to snipe specific things. Like we had the helicopter flying overhead, and you could see them trying to hit that thing out of the sky. Yeah, I mean, they do definitely have elements of, hearts and minds going on within how they operate in some of these communities. And in some of the places that we went after them, they were the police element in the community. They were the guys that built the roads. They were the guys that built the church. They were the guys that would pay for the college educations of some of the kids there. They were the guys that built the school. They were the guys.
And I loved them.
Yeah, and that's true across Mexico. There's a few places like that in Mexico. I did a class in Sinaloa a few years back at Culiacan, the center of the Sinaloa cartel, basically. And I was driving through this road. It's a pretty rough road, and all of a sudden it turned into a nice road, very well lit, very well maintained. And somebody there told me this is the cartel built part of the road. So, in a place like that, who is the governor there? Cartel guys, or some of these communities that they built, that they build around what they do are pretty insane. Kids rolling into a gas station with a Lamborghini Murcielago, wearing sandals, gassing it up and then driving it up to who knows where in the hills.
Yeah.
Kids just running around with AK-47s in the middle of town, guarding somebody that was high level. This is that's why I call it the upside down. Things are flipped in some of these places.
Yeah. How long were you in that element where you were doing raids on a nightly basis?
Probably somewhere along, probably 9 years.
9 years?
Probably 9 years of that.
9 fucking years?
9 years of that.
That's like 2,000, what is that, 2,700 something raids?
I mean,
that's a fuck ton of raids.
Well, that's when we talked last night at dinner. So I talked to you about how's your knees and how's your back. Because that's usually what goes.
How much mission planning goes into one of these raids? Is it like we're fucking going?
Yeah, we're going. We're figuring things out. We got pretty good at figuring out how things were built and how a lot of the housing down there is pretty shitty. I mean, it's a lot of the economic housing is pretty like cut and paste basically. So we would know how things were built. Also, a lot of the shanty towns that we would work in were very flammable. Some of them were built out of cardboard or just tarp, so you wouldn't know what you would get. Sometimes we would hit what apparently was a shanty town type house, and then would end up in a marble floored 4-story house with Doberman pinchers that have pedigrees guarding the outside of it.
Yeah.
So we would never know what we would get. There's some surveillance went into some of the work we did. And we'd try and figure things out. We tried to prepare as best we could for it. But we just, I remember just experience would make us gather things in what we would carry. So I remember hitting this house once, clear door there, just went up to the door, started banging on it, then crowbarring it, angle grinder. Eventually we ripped that thing off, and it was a wall behind it. It was a fake door. It was a fake front door.
Shit.
And we were like, slow clap, you had to applaud that. And there's this secret door tunnel system thing on the back, and nobody was in there when we got in there. It was the ingenuity, basically. It was a back and forth ingenuity thing.
Yeah.
We would try and always figure out how we would get into some place or how we could get out of it. Also, you would go to some places and it wasn't just that house. It was also the house next door. It was also the house over there. It was also the kids on the bike over there had a smartphone that called any sort of activity in there. So we had to do things like cut the water supply, the water mains into some of these places so we couldn't flush things. We would have to figure out the ways of hitting everything simultaneously. So we'd have to spread out. Communication was a big issue. And also imagine going and hitting several houses in the same area at once. Crossfire's a bitch.
Yeah.
And there's just no way to kind of figure that out at times.
So are most of these barrios, is the entire neighborhood on the payroll?
Some of them are, or if they're not on the payroll, they're related to them in some way, like blood related to some of the people working there. So it's in their best interest to call in, hey, there's a bunch of weird cars here or some people that are not from here moving in with guns heading your way.
And not to mention they're supporting the whole fucking community.
Sometimes, yeah. So again, it was a losing battle.
Yeah.
But in a lot of ways. I mean, some of the success we had, like the President Felipe Calderon recently wrote kind of a biography on his term, and he specifically mentions Baja as a victory for him. And it was, we calmed things down in that part of the country. It was one of the only successes that his whole, counter-narcotic drug counter cartel effort had. But it didn't last.
Yeah.